Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host. You guys already know who it is. Your boy Kayvon, always coming at you live from North Carolina. We thank everyone for listening to us. Wherever you are, however you're listening, wherever you're listening, we appreciate you for taking some time out of your busy and your lovely day to listen to the GSMC podcast, football podcast, and we couldn't be more excited about it because we've got a great show today. It is beautiful, beautiful here in North Carolina today. It actually feels like fall. It has that football feeling. Everybody knows what that fall football feeling is like. It's that true walk outside, 60 degrees, the sun is out, but there's a little bit of a cool brisk in the air. And it just, it feels like some normalcy is in the world when you have that feeling. And I hope you guys are all getting some great weather wherever you are as well. And we're going to have a great show. As I said, it does feel like there's some normalcy in the world when you have that weather, but unfortunately, we are not back to normal times as there is a lot of breaking news going on in the NFL world right now, and we're going to dive into all of it right off the bat and see how that affects your football team, how that affects NFL, how that affects fantasy, and we're going to break it all down. And of course, coming at you guys in 2 segments from now, so once we come out at halftime, segment number 3, we are going to be bringing on Emmet Weinman. Emmet is the fantasy football host for GSMC, Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Show. Emmet hosts that show twice a week. You guys can check that out wherever you are listening to this podcast. You can find that one as well. He does a really good job over there. He will help you win your fantasy lineup, so go check that out. But he will be joining us just like he did last week for the last 2 segments of this show, and we're going to have a lot of fun with him. What we're going to do is for the first segment, we're going to break down football. We're going to talk about the Chiefs, if they can go undefeated, who is the best competition against the Chiefs in the AFC, and then we will talk all things fantasy. He will give you guys a rundown of his favorite quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, defense, and who to play with all of this stuff going on with teams not playing this week because of the COVID-19 outbreak. And that's where we're going to start here in a minute. But real quick, I do just want to give you guys a little update on what is happening with my day here before we get into some of the unfortunate news that is now going on. So I'm in Greenville, North Carolina. I told you guys, my girlfriend goes to college, goes to med school here at ECU, Eastern Carolina University, also known as ECU. I'm sure many of you have heard of the football team or something about it here in North Carolina. So I'm over here doing the show from her apartment, and it's great, and it feels great out, like I said, great day. But the thing about Greenville, and I'm not hating anyone in Greenville that's listening, I appreciate you. It's a nice little small town, right? It's a college town. It just feels like the town is built around the university, which is fine. It's great. Those are some of the best towns, but it's definitely got that small country vibe to it. So today they're famous for not today, but every day. They're famous for barbecue. That's what they're famous for here. I mean, North Carolina in general is famous for barbecue. But Greenville has some of the best barbecue joints you can find. So there's a place right up the road from my girlfriend's house called Bee's Barbecue. And it's so good that if you don't get there by 11 in the morning, you're not going to get food. They close down. Like they cook as much in the morning as they can, and once they run out, they're done. They're done. So you have to get there early enough to get your barbecue if you want it for the day, or you're going to have to go somewhere else. So I got there at 10:30 this morning. Think about that. 10:30, I'm in line getting barbecue. I mean, it's football Saturday, right? I got to have my barbecue. So I'm really happy right now because I got a couple pounds of barbecue. I got some coleslaw. I got some chicken. And I'm full. I'm very full. So we'll see how good this show does. But I got some more waiting for me after so I can sit down and watch some more football with my barbecue. Made a good barbecue sandwich. And the thing about North Carolina barbecue is, and this Bee's barbecue place, they give you some sauce. It's like a vinegar sauce. And I know some people are like, whoa, how can you eat your barbecue with sauce? Like, you're a fraud. This sauce is good. This sauce is legit. I'm telling you guys, you got to check it out. It's got that vinegary taste to it. And, it is good. It is good. So I'm a happy camper today, right? I'm a happy camper. I got my barbecue in. My tummy's happy. We're good to go. And yes, I did just say tummy as a 26-year-old man, but I'm okay with who I am. I am very, very confident in myself with saying tummy. All right? So I hope you guys are all as happy as I am today. We have football on. A lot of great college matchups. Alabama facing Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. We've got a really good Georgia-Auburn game. This is so crazy. It's October. It's the first weekend of October, and Georgia and Auburn are facing off. I don't think in the history of the SEC that has ever happened. Usually we get that end of November Auburn-Georgia game. So with it happening now, that's going to be weird. And I hope it's a good one. I hope both teams are ready to go. I'll be very excited to see how that is. And, we've got the release of the Pac-12 schedule has come out. Oregon opens up against Stanford. That will be a fun one to watch as we move forward. And we've got a lot of great stuff going on in the college world, but this is a NFL show mainly, and we've got to talk about the breaking news that is going down in the NFL. That is that the Tennessee Titans have now gotten up to 8 players testing positive for COVID-19, 16 total members of the Titans organization with people on the staff. And so a total of 8 players and 16 total when you count the staff members. And it looks like it just keeps going here. Hopefully that is it. Hopefully no one else will test positive. But we officially have our first outbreak of the NFL season. Now, let me take you guys back a little bit, okay? Do you remember when we came on this show when baseball just started? And the Miami Marlins were the first team to get an outbreak, and then the St. Louis Cardinals got an outbreak, and everyone was crushing baseball. They said, you took too long figuring out the money side of things, and you didn't really look at what's going on with COVID. And I even crushed baseball and Rob Manfred as well. Well, you have to give props to baseball now because they figured it out. And they're now in the postseason, and it's been a great postseason so far. But what they were able to do to figure it out is, first of all, they said, you got to take onus on yourself. The organizations have to be in charge of this. If the organizations want to play baseball, you have to make sure you're following protocols. This is going to be the same with the NFL. But the one thing about baseball is they were okay. They said coming into the season, we're already doing a shortened season. We're okay if some teams play different numbers of games. Like Miami didn't play anywhere near the amount of games that the Chicago Cubs played, but they both made the playoffs. You get what I'm saying? You can't have that with NFL. You can't have a team play 16 games and then another team play 12 games. That makes things very unfair in NFL because there's already such a small amount of games anyways. But that's not the biggest issue here. We'll get into that. The biggest issue is first making sure that everyone's okay, right? We want players to be okay. I get it. They're young. They're NFL players. They're in good shape, and they should be okay. But you never know with this virus. Second, the coaches. The coaches are older. The owners are older. So that's something to worry about, all right? These coaches, these owners, they're older. None of them are all in great shape. So you, first of all, wish the best health and that everyone's safe recover in that Titans organization, as well as Cam Newton, who has also been tested positive for COVID-19, as well as the Kansas City Chiefs backup quarterback, Jordan Ta'amu, who is their practice player quarterback. He runs scout team, right? So last week he was running scout team, trying to emulate Lamar Jackson so that the Chiefs defense can get a good idea of how to go up against him. So that's worrisome because a quarterback, see, one of the biggest things that these coaches and these GMs were most worried about is quarterbacks. Quarterbacks getting the virus because a quarterback is the center of everything. A quarterback is always touching the football. He's throwing the football to other members of the team. He's in the quarterback meetings. He's in the offensive meetings. He's in the huddle with these players. Like, they did not want quarterback. They didn't want anyone to get the virus, obviously. But having Cam Newton get that virus, that is very worrisome for the New England Patriots. Now, this is the whole thing about all of this stuff, all right? First of all, the coronavirus is extremely contagious. We all knew this. And it was honestly dumb to think that at some point this wasn't going to happen. Now, I do think what happened is the first 3 weeks of the NFL season have gone so good and things have looked great in terms of, following protocols mainly and just not having positive tests. Now, there's been a lot of coaches that have been fined for not wearing masks, but you have to, really give props to the NFL for this because they nipped that in the butt quick by giving these coaches and these organizations a hefty fine for saying if you're on the sideline again with no mask, this is what's going to happen. And that's where I first want to start off by saying good job to the NFL, okay? People are going to rip the NFL because that's just how this is going to go. Someone's going to have to take the fall of this. But the NFL is doing the best job that they can do. They're making sure that each player is able to get tested every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, each staff member, everyone involved in each organization, right? So that's a huge check to start this off. Now, that's where we give them, credit for letting them do that. Also, they're clearly taking things serious, all right? They're seeing coaches without masks. They're fining them a boatload of money, like so much money where people are saying, are you kidding me? But that's good. That's what you want. You want them to take things serious. Second, what they did with the Titans game. They realized when there was only three players that tested positive. This is before we got to 16 total. At first, there was only 3 Titans players to test positive, and the NFL immediately made the Titans shut down their organization. Why? Because they didn't want what is happening now to happen. Now, it happened anyways because this virus is so contagious, but you have to give the NFL props because if the NFL did not make Tennessee shut down their organization and make everyone leave and not able to come back, this could be way worse than it already is. So I love the seriousness that the NFL is taking this. They're not saying, hey, this is a joke. Everything will be fine. We're going to move along and play with the players that are not positive. No, they're taking this for real, and I love that. Now, where the NFL did screw up is not creating multiple weeks to reschedule games. They should have, I said this before the season, they should give every team 2 bye weeks this season. Make it an anomaly season. It's already going to be an odd one so that every team has an extra week to reschedule if something like this happens, all right? They were able to reschedule this game, and they'll be able to reschedule a couple more, but if this keeps happening to organizations, it's going to become a problem. And that's when the whole competitive advantage of a season gets into play, which we'll get into as we go. This is what I want to focus on now, okay? Because again, people are going to attack the NFL. They're going to say that the NFL is to blame for this, and that is wrong. Who is to blame for this is no individual. you can't blame an individual, okay? What you can do is you can blame an entire organization. Now, I am not inside the Tennessee Titans locker room. I am not inside the Tennessee Titans building. I do not know how this started, who got the first test, and how it's spread from there. What I do know, though, is the Atlanta Falcons had a player last week in the name of A.J. Terrell. He is a rookie he was the first-round pick of the Titans, cornerback, played for Clemson, won a national championship for Clemson, great player. He tested positive for COVID-19 last week. Now, he was in the building all week, okay? He was there all week. He was practicing all week. He was in meetings all week. He was in the Falcons building all week. He tested positive on Friday night. The Falcons found out that he was positive. They immediately tested everyone else in that Falcons organization, all players, all coaches, all staffs, everyone. Not one other person was tested positive. What does that tell you? It tells you one thing. The Falcons took this serious. The Falcons made sure to have everybody wearing masks every single time they step foot inside the organization, inside the building. They have their meetings spaced out 6 feet apart. They've shown pictures of it. They have each chair spaced out in their meeting rooms. They are following protocol, okay? There is no possible way a player that has coronavirus, the so contagious coronavirus, doesn't give it to anyone else if they're not following protocol. I mean, the whole team would have had it. Now, again, I don't know what is going on in that Titans organization, but you can put common sense together to say that clearly, at least some of the people in this Titans organization were not following protocol. And that is how it spread. Now, look, this virus is unfortunate. It really is. Okay? You can get it in so many different ways. And sometimes you can follow protocols and wear your mask and social distance, and you still could get it. That is possible because it's so contagious. All right? But if you are wearing a mask every second you are in that building, if you're not taking it off for 1 quick minute or anything like that, if you are social distancing every single meeting, not just a couple of the meetings, not just here and there, every meeting, then you have a much higher chance to not spread the virus when someone gets it. And clearly the Titans have been a little bit lackadaisical on that. Maybe they were on the plane home from Minnesota celebrating a win and all of them didn't have their mask on. It could have happened in so many different ways. But that's the problem with this virus. It will happen if these teams don't take it seriously. Now, what did we see happen here with the New England Patriots? We have now found out that Cam Newton has tested positive. And again, I am not blaming a certain player here. I do not want people to blame Cam Newton. And I know that's going to happen. And I feel so bad for Cam Newton because he has just been everything short of, perfect this season. You know, he's been working hard. He's been saying the right things in the media. He's been a team player. And I love to see that resurgence in him now, that fire in him. And he's having a great season on the field as well. So I hate this for him. But clearly, he got the virus somehow. And it happens. It's the virus. And now we're going to find out if the Patriots have been doing what the Falcons were doing or if they were doing what the Titans were doing. Were they following protocols? If they were following protocols, then hopefully this will be the only positive test in that organization, which will be huge, which will then show that that Titans thing was just a lucky scenario. That Falcons was just a lucky scenario. No, it will show that, okay, we now have a sample size of 2 organizations that have had a player test positive, and that's it. It hasn't spread. So I am having all fingers crossed here that 1, Cam Newton is okay and is healthy and is fine and is going to be all right. And then 2, that the Patriots were following protocols. And you would think of when you think of the Patriots, you would think that this is the one team that Bill Belichick would make sure is following the protocols. Bill Belichick is all about the rules. He's strict, he's stern, and you would think that he has his players following these protocols. You really would, and I hope so. And we will find out. Now, when it comes to what the players are going, what the NFL is going to do with these games, all right, so we just saw that the NFL has announced, obviously the Titans-Steelers game is postponed. That's getting pushed back to like week 7, I want to say, week 7 or week 8. And both the Steelers and the Titans will now use their bye week this week. The problem with the Titans, though, is if they keep having people and staff and players test positive, like they had 3 more this morning, that next week game against the Bills will not happen either. It will not happen. If come tomorrow, Sunday, more players are still testing positive in that organization, like newer players, there's no way that they can play again on Sunday. And that's when things get complicated. So we have to hope that outbreak is done. And then the second thing we have to hope for is that this is a big wake-up call for every organization in the NFL. Things have been terrific so far. They really have. Before this whole outbreak with the Titans and Cam Newton testing positive and AJ Terrell, it was it. No one was testing positive. They were following protocols, they were following rules, and through 3 weeks, it looked great. And now we have a big thing going on, and I already know people are going to hate on the NFL for this, and that's not fair. It's not fair, all right? But what this hopefully is a massive wake-up call for every organization out there. And they're looking at this and they're saying, okay, wow, this is for real. We see what's happening with the Titans. We see it. We cannot let our guard down for 1 single second. This is going to be a 17-week process of every single day wearing your mask, every single day wear social distancing, sitting in your hotel room, going nowhere else, ordering food to be dropped off at your hotel room, to be dropped off at your house. If you want to get paid, if you want to have games, that's what you have to do. So the positive of all of this is that hopefully it's a big wake-up call for every other organization. Whoa, we can't let this happen because look how easy it happened to the Titans. That's what we have to hope. Now, this is the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to look at that New England Patriots Kansas City Chiefs game. Is it going to really be played on Tuesday? If so, what does that mean for the game? And what does that mean moving forward? And then remember, coming up in one segment after that, we will then bring you on Emmet Weinman, host of the Fantasy Football Show with GSMC, and we will talk all things football and fantasy with him. So stay tuned. Do not go anywhere. Lots of breaking news going on. Lots to talk about before the NFL Week 4 Sunday tomorrow. Stick with us. Let's dive into it. We'll be right back after this.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon. We thank everyone for tuning in today. Hope you're having a lovely, great weekend. Beautiful weather wherever you are, however you're listening. We appreciate you for just taking some time out and listening to this great podcast. We put a lot of work in and effort into it, so it means a lot to us. Coming up next segment, Emmet Weinman from also the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast is going to come on to talk all things fantasy football and regular football as well. We're going to break down some games. You know, I had my rant with the Philadelphia Eagles told Doug Peterson not going to tie the game instead of not trying to win it. And I went off on that. He is a resident Cowboy fan that comes on this show, so we're going to get his thoughts on that, and I'm sure he has some strong takes there. That would be fun to talk about. We'll get his thoughts on quarterbacks and running backs and, sleeper wide receivers and tight ends to find when that for fantasy this year and much more. It's going to be a fun show, so fun couple segments we'll do with him to end out the show. So tune in for that. And then let's just keep it rolling here till then. And I'll tell you what, the breaking news, everyone's talking about it. Cam Newton of the New England Patriots has tested positive for COVID-19. And now it's just wait and see, right? That we've already heard that the NFL is postponing this game on Sunday. Now, they are trying to move it back to Monday or Tuesday of this week. Just to give the reason that is for, so a lot of people are saying, why would they not cancel it altogether or postpone it altogether like the Titans and Steelers did? Well, this is why. First of all, if it becomes where it's just Cam Newton that is tested positive, then they don't need to postpone it, right? They need to postpone it from Sunday, but they don't need to postpone it back another week. Now, just like what we saw with the Falcons, AJ Terrell gets tested positive. The Falcons make sure that, the NFL makes sure that nobody else in that building is positive. Everyone else is good to go. Boom. We get to play that football game on Sunday. So it works out that way. Now, I see a lot of people, and this is a very good point, saying, well, hey, Kayvon, this is Cam Newton. No offense to AJ Terrell, but AJ Terrell's a quarterback. You could be the best quarterback ever. You're not going to have as much impact on a game as Cam Newton is because he's a quarterback. And he's touching the ball every single time they're on offense, and this is a big deal. So doesn't that become unfair? Well, of course it's unfair. I think the Chiefs were going to win the game anyways, but obviously the Patriots have had way more of a chance to play that game. To actually keep that game competitive and maybe even win it outright if Cam Newton is playing, right? Because the Patriots have beaten Patrick Mahomes before. Bill Belichick has the recipe to do it, which is, put pressure on Mahomes, make him uncomfortable. It's kind of like what you have to do to Brady when Brady was in his prime in New England. And we'll talk about that game more. We'll break it down if it is going to happen. But it's a fair point, right? Like, you don't want to watch this game. You don't want the Patriots to play this game without Cam Newton because it really has no indication on what this game really would be like. But with that being said, we're in a pandemic here, and things are not going to be perfect. They're just not. Nothing is going to be perfect this season. People are going to have to take these weeks like it's injuries, right? It's almost just like you have to look at it like Cam Newton is hurt this week, and he'll be back next week, hopefully, if everything's all right. He might actually end up missing 2 weeks, but the positive of all of this is hopefully it's only Cam, right? Hopefully there's no one else there that gets tested positive because that's when it becomes a huge issue, is if we have another outbreak. If we have another outbreak, then things start to get really tricky. And they get tricky from the standpoint of how are you going to start rescheduling these games? Look, the NFL decided not to do 2 bye weeks this year for each team. I do not know why. I still do not get that, but for some reason they have decided that when they started this season. So it gives very little room for teams to be able to maneuver, for teams to be able to switch around their schedules. Because if you have 2 bye weeks, well, then if you have to reschedule one game, boom, you just put that game in that bye week, right? If it starts to become more than one game, that's when it becomes a real issue. Now, the problem is this. With the NFL, you can't look at this competitively and say it's fair for the New England Patriots to play, 14 games while, let's say, just for instance, the Miami Dolphins, or we'll do Buffalo Bills actually. The Buffalo Bills played 16 games, and the Patriots have a better winning percentage because they played less games, so they're going to win the AFC East. That's when things get unfair. That's when the whole competitive advantage thing goes out the window. The whole trying to be competitively fair thing goes out the window. You can't have that if you're in the NFL. This isn't baseball. There isn't so many games where you can play doubleheaders and all that. There's only 16 games. It's what makes the NFL so special, That's what makes it so special. Every single game is so important. It's like college football. So this is what the NFL has to be worried about. And I promise you right now, they are up there and they're grinding their teeth and they're worried. And they should be, because this is scary. This is you are now having an outbreak. You are now exactly doing what has happened with the Major League Baseball, and there is an outbreak. Now, this is the thing. The positive of all this is we all knew this was going to happen, right? And now that's not a positive as in, oh, yay, it did happen. No, we hate that it happened. We wish it didn't happen. But everybody went into this season thinking that at some point there's going to be a team or a couple players that test positive. Now, we were doing that hoping, okay, maybe it doesn't end up happening, but because it's not in a bubble, and remember the NFL said that it just didn't seem like it was feasible, it didn't seem like it was possible to make every team go into a bubble, because you had to, even if you just did city by city bubbles, which is what I said they should do, they should make every single organization bubble off their players and their staff for 15 weeks, 16 weeks. You do it would be tough, but you could get it done if you really wanted to. The NFL did not want to mess with that. So when you're traveling like this, positive tests are going to happen. This is the key in everything. Following the protocols. It's okay if a couple of positive tests happens. What's not okay is what we have with the Tennessee Titans. An official outbreak where 16 total people in that organization now have COVID-19. 16 people. How in the world are they going to play next week? I don't see that there's any way. I really don't, which means they're going to have to reschedule 2 games. So they're already 2 games behind, which then puts the teams that they're playing in an unfortunate situation. What are they going to do? So the Falcons. All right, I keep going back to the Falcons because that's the only thing that's happened so far, and I hope the Patriots ends up being the same thing, and we'll find out as we go these next couple games. A.J. Terrell tested positive. He is now out on the COVID-19 list, which, by the way, all those people saying that they'll be back in 1 week, A.J. Terrell's not playing on Monday. Okay, he's still on COVID-19, and he got a longer break because the Falcons have a Monday night game this week. So if you get tested positive for COVID-19, all likelihood is you're missing at least 2 games, okay? But they didn't have an outbreak. They had one player get it and not anyone else because they were following protocols. Yes, of course some of this has luck. It's a virus. It's a contagious virus. But the best you can do is you put your facility, your members in the facility, you put your building, everything in the best possible position as you can be, and that is sanitizing, that is following protocols, and that is, most importantly, wearing masks. We'll see if the Patriots have been following protocols, and if so, then most likely Cam Newton will be the only one to test positive. And that's what we have to hope for, all right? Because again, positive tests are most likely to happen. It is a pandemic. It's just how it happens. If it keeps happening like the Titans situation, then we need to start talking about, can we even have a season? Can we even finish a season? If it happens more to the Falcons and hopefully what happens with the Patriots, then it's okay. You know what? We can actually work with this. And my only hope is that this sent a strong message to the league and most importantly to every other organization out there. Every other organization out there better be looking and saying, okay, so far we've had no positive coronavirus tests, pat on the back to us, but that is nothing to celebrate because we still have 13, 14 more weeks to go, and we better step up our game. We cannot let our guard down for 1 second, or it could hinder our chances to make the playoffs. It could hinder our chances to play. And if you don't play, you don't make money. And if you don't make money, you don't pay the players. So this is a team effort here. Everybody has something to lose if you're not playing. All right? You've got to be responsible. You've got to keep the protocols going. You've got to make them stronger if you have to make them stronger. If you want to find these players, do whatever you have to do to make sure everyone is following protocols. And this, I can tell you this as a fact from hearing people that know people within the NFL. I have been told, I have been told by sources. All right, I'm pulling out the source card here. That the NFL is very, very nervous about when teams start to fall out of contention, like the Jets, like the Broncos. My Falcons are getting close to that area, you know. All these 0-3 teams that might end up going 0-4, once they start to get, okay, mathematically, they're not able to make the playoffs anymore, what starts to happen then? Do these younger players start to get loose with their restrictions? Hey, we're not in the playoffs anymore. Let's go out and have some drinks, whatever. That's a problem. The NFL, I can tell you straight up, the NFL is worried about that. And that's something that we have to keep an eye on, and that's another thing, make it where, hey, we'll fine you. Whatever you have to do to make sure that these players understand and that these organizations understand the mask must stay on at all times. You must not go anywhere else other than home practice. Get food delivered to you if you want to eat out. Get food delivered to you when you're traveling, when you're in a hotel. You sit in that hotel room. All right, they're not putting you guys in Motel 6s. They're putting you in very nice hotel rooms. Sit in the hotel room, order your room service, put your legs up, watch TV, relax. There's no need to go out. And when you do go out, you better keep that mask on all the time. So look, that's just that simple. If we want an NFL season, that's how it's going to have to be. And we just have to hope and pray that, number one, everyone is safe that has tested positive. Everyone is healthy that has tested positive for COVID-19. And then number two, this doesn't become a trend. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon. Now let's break it down and run through some games here before we head into segment 3 where we bring Emmet Weinman on. And I want to actually run into that, go through that Patriots-Chiefs game real quick. And look, if it happens or if it doesn't happen, Cam Newton is not playing. And that's why I want to talk about it because, again, if it happens, Cam Newton will not play. If it doesn't happen and it's moved back to later in the year, then maybe he will play then, but it all depends. So the thing is this. I said last episode that if the Chiefs beat the Patriots this week, they can go undefeated. I said other than that, they've got a couple more hard games where they play the Buffalo Bills on Thursday Night Football. And then they also play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers later in the schedule, right? So I said if they can beat the Patriots, then they have about 2 more games that are going to be tough, and they can do it. And I said this. I said, look, for the Chiefs to win and go undefeated, there's about 13 teams in the league where Patrick Mahomes doesn't even have to play good, and they can still win. They're that stacked. Then there's about 5 teams where Patrick Mahomes has to play good to win, and that's like the Ravens. And then there's like 2 or 3 teams where Patrick Mahomes has to play perfect, like Patrick Mahomes type football for them to win. All right? And those are, to me, the Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I've been thinking about it. After we talked about it on can they go undefeated, I started to think, what teams can actually challenge this team? Who is the team that, and we're going to go over this with Emmet coming up, that is in best situation to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC. We're not talking NFC, AFC. And it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know why? Because they can put pressure up the middle, they can bring pressure outside, and that's how you beat Mahomes. See, if you guys remember Tom Brady in his day, and look, Mahomes is different than Brady because Mahomes can run, and that's even more scary. You know, that puts a whole other element on this. I mean, he's not Lamar Jackson run, but he can move. He can get first downs with his legs. He's an athlete. There's no doubt about that. But in Brady's heyday, when he was with the Patriots, and Brady still looks good now, I'm not saying he's lost his touch, but when he was with the Patriots and they were winning those Super Bowls, what was his one weakness? The one way to beat him was pressure up the middle. Why did they lose to the Giants in the Super Bowl twice? Well, yeah, a couple of lucky plays by Eli Manning and all in the offense and the crazy catch and all that stuff, but the defense, Michael Strahan and those boys, they were coming up the middle. They were making Brady uncomfortable. That's how you beat a great quarterback. That Falcons Super Bowl, before Brady went on a freaking tear, 28-3, they were down 28-3. Why? Because Grady Jarrett, that defensive tackle, had 3 sacks on him in the first half. He was just knocking through him. He was making Brady uncomfortable. When the Patriots beat the Kansas City Chiefs a couple years ago in the AFC title game, they were making Mahomes uncomfortable and they were running the ball. Those are the two things. You have to run the ball to keep the Chiefs off the field, and then you have to make him uncomfortable running it up by going up the middle, hitting him, making him feel uncomfortable. Those are the only ways you're going to beat the Chiefs. I do not think that anyone will beat the Chiefs in the regular season. I really think that they can go undefeated. I really do, especially if they end up playing this game and Cam Newton is not playing. Then that becomes just the Bills on Thursday night and the Buccaneers as the only teams that have a chance of beating them, in my opinion. But in the postseason, I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers have the best chance in the AFC to actually put some serious pressure on Kansas City and maybe even beat them, depending on as long as Big Ben Roethlisberger, of course, stays healthy. Now, I wanted to move on to another big game of the day. Of this upcoming Sunday kick, and that is the Cleveland Browns against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Cleveland is 2-1 for the first time since 2014. We had on, go check this last episode out, we had on Emmett Golden of ESPN Radio. He does ESPN Cleveland Radio and ESPN National Radio. Great guy. I mean, really, really awesome guy. It's the first segment of that last show. You guys should really go check it out. We had a great conversation about the Browns and football in general. But, he was talking to us about how, Baker is still not fully proven. And last year, a lot of fans lost some respect for him or lost some promise in him, maybe is a better way to put it, because of just how the year went, right? He didn't look good. That freshman year, that rookie year, whatever you want to call it, he looked really good, but then it dropped off since then. And it's become the question of, did he look good that rookie year because of the competition, or was it, has he just lost some type of touch now? So they now go into Dallas, who is 1-2. This is a must-win game. A lot of people would say that Dallas should be 0-3 if the Falcons didn't choke away and forgot how to catch an onside kick. Right? So you're at home now, Dallas, and the Cleveland Browns are coming in. And I get that they're 2-1, but don't let that fool you. The two teams that they beat was the Cincinnati Bengals and the Washington football team. Those are two teams that they definitely should win. Now, Emmett said this, and this is correct. The Browns used to not win games where they should win. So that is a positive. Does that make sense? They used to lose the games that they're supposed to lose and then lose the games that they're not supposed to lose. Now at least they're winning the games that they're supposed to win. They're going to go into this, and their whole style is run the ball. Nick Chubb, run the ball. Nick Chubb, run the ball. Kareem Hunt, run the ball. And then, Baker Mayfield, if we have to pass it, then we'll pass it. That's what they're going to do, right? And they're going to have success against this Cowboys defense, which is porous, to say the least. Okay? Very porous. But the problem is, they're not going to be able to stop this Cowboys offense. Dak Prescott is the only QB to throw for over 400 yards in all 3 games. He's got weapons galore, but he doesn't have the wins. He only has 1 win. All right, now, all 3 games have been close. You could say they should be 0-3. You could argue that they could be 3-0. But you are what your record says you are, right? So you're 1-2. You're playing the Browns, and you're at home. You must win this game, Dallas Cowboys. There is no excuses. You have to win this game. You have to. There is no more excuses about it. You cannot let the Cleveland Browns, I don't care that they're 2-1, you can't let them come in here and beat them. You have way too many weapons. Get Ezekiel Elliott going in the run game. Okay? Use those receivers you have. And I don't care if the Browns put up 40 on you. You outscore them. And I think that they will do that, okay? I think that the Browns will come in and put up some points because, like I said, this Cowboys defense, it's really bad to start off the year so far. But I don't think they'll be able to keep up with the Cowboys offense. The Cowboys offense has been rolling, and I think that the Cowboys offense will keep it up this week at home, and they should walk away winning this game by 6-7 points. All right, that's a big game of the weekend that I really wanted us to dive into before we then take a break and bring on Emmet. All right, so we are going to now take a quick break. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your boy, Kayvon Izami, your host. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Emmet Weinman of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast will come on to join us to talk all things football, all things fantasy football. We will talk about the breaking news with COVID. We will talk about the Chiefs and the Ravens, the Philadelphia Eagles, what's going on with the Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz situation, and then he will give you guys the lineup to look for in fantasy football this week for each position. Stay tuned. I'm telling you, you do not want to miss this. We'll be right back after this.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. This is the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. We thank everyone for joining us today on this episode of the GSMC Football Podcast as we are coming out of halftime now, entering the third segment of the show. We're bringing on our good man, our good friend from the GSMC Podcast Network as well, Emmet Weinman. Emmet Weinman has his own show, GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Check that out twice a week. It's a great show, a lot of great content, and he will help you win your fantasy season. Emmet, how you doing, my man?
Well, I said this last week, and I'll say it this week. When it's football, we're doing well.
Right? We are doing well. Even when we get some bad news like we've had today, you still got to be thankful. You can turn on the TV. You got college football on right now. We're still going to have NFL games tomorrow. So overall, it's a pretty good time. I don't know about you, man. How's the weather in New Jersey right now? Like right here in North Carolina, dude, we have that exact fall weather. Like you walk outside and you just think football. You know what I'm talking about?
And that's the same weather we have over here.
Oh, that's the
literally
best.
see the colors changing on the leaves. I mean,
Yep.
it's football weather, 60 degrees and sun.
There it is. That's the best, man. Well, let's get into it, dude. I always look forward to this segment with you since we started it, and for everyone listening, you know, we're gonna probably end up doing this as a weekly thing. We've gotten a lot of good, you know, really a lot of people saying that they enjoyed it. I know Emmet knows his football. I enjoy talking it with him. So you can always reach out to us on Twitter. Let us know if there's something particular you guys want us to talk about each Saturday's episode when we do this with Emmet here, Emmet Weinman. All right, Emmet, let's start off with this. Clearly, we've got to start off with what's going on with the whole COVID thing. You know, the Titans, they played the Vikings last week on the way home. We don't know how it all started, but clearly there is now an outbreak in the Titans organization, and that they will not be playing the Steelers this week. That will be rescheduled. And honestly, man, I don't even know if they're going to end up playing the Bills the following week if people keep on coming up positive like this. And then now we hear that Cam Newton has tested positive. Hopefully that isn't isolated where no one else on the Patriots has it, and they will be able to not, you know, have an outbreak in the Patriots organization from there. But I'm just going to start off with saying real quick about what I think of this, and then I'm going to hand it off to you. You know, this is a virus that, as we said before we even got on air here, it is extremely contagious. I mean, you can get it when you're not even trying to get it. You know, you can just be doing your thing. You can almost even be following protocols and still get it. That's how, you know, contagious it is. But I do think here that there was some guard let down. And I'm not in the Titans organization. I can't say that for sure. But if you look at the Falcons organization last week, man, AJ Terrell, he got tested positive for corona. And he was in that organization all week. He was in that building. No one else on the Falcons was tested positive. So they clearly were following protocols. They clearly had masks on. They clearly were social distancing during their meetings. I don't know if the Vikings were doing that to have this type of outbreak. What are your thoughts about what's going on right now? And do you think that this is something that the NFL is sitting in their offices right now and they're worried, man? They're really worried about how this is going to go forward.
Yeah, I think they're even more worried than them is the owners. I mean, the owners don't want to stop football at all because they're already losing tons of money with not having any fans in the stands. There's no way they're going to want to pay the players their guaranteed salaries for the entire year and then not get any football in return. So for them, I think they're the most worried. But I don't know. But for the players, I mean, I don't know if this is like a Lou Williams situation where someone's just totally breaking the protocol. But I think it goes to show how dangerous this disease can be. I mean, it's very deceptive. This is not something that you could just scan and like it's a fever. I mean, it's a seriously dangerous disease, and I think you have to worry a lot about these coaching staffs. I mean, the odds of a 25, I'm not a doctor, but the odds of a 25 to 30-year-old NFL athlete dying from COVID are very, very, very slim.
Yep.
The odds of a 65 to 70-year-old coach of dying from COVID are very, very high. So I think that a lot of these coaches are at risk when it comes to, you know, these players getting COVID because, you know, they're in the facility with them every single day. They're on the field with them every single day. They're traveling together. I mean, they're not eating off the same plate, but still, you talked about it earlier. You don't need to be a doctor to understand how dangerous this disease can be.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, and that's actually a really good point about the coaches. And like you said, obviously that doesn't mean that it's you know, we're just going to put on by that the players got it, they'll be fine. You know, we obviously want to make sure everyone's safety and healthy, but like you said, at the end of the day, the facts are the facts, and the players, these NFL players that are in great shape, that are young, they're most likely just going to have to get through the you know, whole stage of being positive, and then they'll be fine from there. It is a little bit something more to worry about with these coaches and with these older owners too. I mean, a lot of the owners around their team a lot, they're older as well, and that's something to be for sure worried about. And I just want to, you know, like, this is why, man, moving into the season, I don't know why the NFL didn't do 2 bye weeks for each team, because I want to move to the football side of things here. You know, in baseball, we saw like the Marlins made the playoffs in baseball when they didn't even play nearly as much games as the Cubs did. And I just bring that up because they beat the Cubs yesterday to move on. But in the NFL, man, you can't have a team that plays 16 games and isn't going to make the playoffs over a team that plays 13 games and is going to make the playoffs. Like that is not fair to me in the NFL. And that's why I don't know why they didn't do 2 bye weeks so that they could move around games like this. What are your thoughts on that?
Listen, a lot of this has to come down to TV contracts, and if it ain't about the money, it's about the money. That's the bottom line when it comes to.
You're right, man. You're right.
They're going to try to save every cent possible, and they're going to try to make every cent possible. They don't really care about the overall health of the players. Mm-hmm. Sad to say, but that's just the reality of it.
It is.
And I think when you're talking about these games, they're just going to want to get as many games in as possible. I mean, I agree. I think the Thursday night games are ridiculous. I mean, those players' bodies are just, they got to be beat up.
Yeah.
So the amount of painkillers that they're probably injecting is the same as a horse. It's ridiculous.
I don't mean to laugh, but you're right. I mean, you're spot on, and that's it. When it comes,
Taylor.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
They treat these players like horses. I mean, they're just injecting stuff, get them ready to go, boom, they're out there. I mean, they care more about what the number is going to say on the check rather than the overall product. I don't know about product, but the overall health of the organization and players specifically.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean...
It's all about the money.
It's all about the money. That's why you see teams like Dallas trying to fit as many people as they can in a stadium when clearly you should not be having people watch, in a crowded area like that. And I get it, there's social distancing and all that, but I mean, they have suites open. Like, how are you going to put people in a bunch of people in a suite right now? So that just shows you it's all about the money. And all we can hope for, man, is that this is a huge wake-up call. Weeks 1 through 3 really went as pretty much as perfect as you can have it. There only one player, as in A.J. Terrell, tested positive. There wasn't an outbreak through that Falcons organization. It looked like teams were, staying focused. They were following protocols, and then this happened. So hopefully it gives every organization a wake-up to say, hey, look, this is a virus. Like you said, anything can happen. It's so contagious, but at least do everything you can to follow the protocols. So hopefully if someone does test positive, it's not going to outbreak throughout the entire organization. And we'll just have to see from there. Is there anything else you want to say on this before we move to talking football?
No, I mean, I want to wrap up your point of just how dangerous it is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, let's look at the Patriots. Do you really think Bill Belichick would be undisciplined with his players?
No.
They're out here moving? No, I mean, I don't think Cam Newton's out here, going to parties and doing this and that. He's trying to risk himself. He's probably doing as little as he can to get out and just stay at the facility, work out, and probably go home, and he's still got the disease. So, I mean, this could happen to anybody, anytime. So it's going to make for a wild season.
It is. It is going to make for a wild season. It's going to really, really have some implications and some effects on fantasy football, which is what Emmet knows all football here, but he has his own fantasy football podcast. So we're going to really get into fantasy football here. And I want you guys to stay tuned and listen to that coming up in just a little bit, because I'm telling you, this is, right now the Patriots-Chiefs game is pushed back to Monday and Tuesday. Do you keep those players in your lineup hoping that it happens? These are some things Emmet and I are going to talk about as we go, so stay tuned for that. But Emmet, let's move to football real quick, all right? Because we saw, Monday night, man, it was a game where, probably the most hyped up Monday night game since that Rams-Chiefs game a couple years ago. You remember that one?
I sure do.
Yeah, so what happened was it was a letdown, in my opinion. The Chiefs came out and they just reassured everyone that they are unstoppable on offense when they want to be and when they're clicking. And clearly Baltimore is a team that they get up and going for. So I'm just going to come out and say it. And look, this might be crazy, but this is sports talk radio at its finest. Can the Chiefs, Emmet, go undefeated this NFL season?
Well, there was only 2 teams to do that in the history of the NFL, the last team being the 2007 Patriots. I'd say it's very slim. Somebody's going to catch up to them. Even a 15-1 is very, very hard. A 14-2 is extremely hard. So, I would have to vote no if I were going to place a bet on that. And then who
is the team in the AFC that most likely can challenge them, regular season or postseason? They look so good against Baltimore that it's starting to feel to me that Baltimore has an issue mentally with them. And I don't know if that's going to change or not. I trust Jim Harbaugh. I trust that staff. They know what they're doing. But John Harbaugh, excuse me, but I don't know if that's going to be the team. Do you think that Baltimore is still the biggest threat to Kansas City in the AFC, or is there another team in your mind?
Well, I mean, let's just talk about the game. I mean, the reason the Ravens lost, I mean, the Ravens have no drop back pass. So when they get out of their style and they have to play from behind, and Lamar's got to stretch the field vertically, they absolutely panic. They just can't do it. They can't do it. That's why they lost to the Titans. Yep. And then this is the same thing. And, you know, there's a reason. I'm not saying this is correct, but there's a reason Bill Polian said Lamar might be a receiver. And
right.
That's not, I mean, obviously Lamar is not a good, I mean, it's not like Lamar is not a good quarterback. He won the MVP. But, I mean, there's limitations. That's just the reality of it. I mean, how many times last year, you got to ask yourself, how many times last year were the Ravens trailing in games during the regular season? They barely, almost never. So they were able to play from ahead. And when he's playing from ahead, he's got the run game going, it's almost impossible to stop. So I think the Ravens, it's more about they're limited. They only play one style. They have to play that one style. It's a great style, but if you can force them to play left-handed and force them to play from behind, they're going to have a lot of trouble. So when you're playing Patrick Mahomes, I think the teams that have a shot are the teams that can, A, pressure him from the middle. Okay, you got to pressure him, because if you don't pressure him, you're just going to go home. And you might as well just not even send your players out there. And then if you're not going to not only pressure him, you have to keep him off the field.
Yeah.
So you're going to need a great ground game. That's why I thought the Ravens had a good shot.
I did
thought
too.
They could do both those things, but
I did too, and especially, you know, they made some additions on defense for that reason. I mean, you're spot on. The coaching staff, the organization, they looked at what happened last offseason, and they said we need to bring in Calais Campbell for what's going to happen against Patrick Mahomes and who can pressure Patrick Mahomes and stuff like that. But just back to your point, because then I'm going to bring up with who I think actually can do that best in the AFC, but with your point about Lamar Jackson and how if he's up, that team is one of the best teams we've seen in a really long time. But when he's down, it's starting to become a reoccurring thing now. Where can he actually come back? Now, do you put more onus, and I know you're not in that organization, but you watch football, you know football. Do you put more onus on Lamar for that, or on this coaching staff for not creating more than just this one game plan? I mean, it just seems like they have this one run style game plan, and when they get down, they panic.
I mean, that's a good question. I'd say the reality of it is Lamar they have no drop back pass game. I mean, Harbaugh can only do so much. Greg Roman, they can only do so much. I think they definitely have to think of. And I know for sure in the coaches meeting this week, they're saying to themselves, look, fellas, if we ever get behind, we have to think of an alternative because we just panic.
Yeah.
I mean, they completely panic when they go down. So I don't know. Maybe they can devise something.
Yeah, you can only hope that Lamar, because at the end of the day, you're right. Lamar. The coaching staff can only do so much, and Lamar if he's not going to be able to hit these passes, nothing's going to happen. So you can only hope that Lamar just develops that game because he is a fun player to watch, and I really want him to become a complete player. Now, let me ask you this, all right? Because you defined the best way to beat the Chiefs. I mean, you said it, and everyone agrees with you because everyone that knows football knows you have to beat the Chiefs. It's kind of like how you beat Tom Brady in his prime. You have to put pressure on him. If you see the Super Bowls that they lost against the Giants and then the ones that they were down in the Falcons, it's because they were sacking Tom Brady. They were making him comfortable. That's what you have to do with Mahomes. What do you think about the Steelers, man? That defense is ferocious. They have a pass rush that can get to him. That's why the Chargers do so well against them in week 2 because they have that pass rush. What do you think? I think that the Steelers might be the best team in the AFC to challenge. I'm not saying they're the best team, the second best team in the whole AFC, but they might be the best team to challenge Kansas City if Big Ben can stay healthy. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I could definitely see that on paper with their defense matching up. I just think they're going to get into a game where they're going to try to shoot out with Patrick Mahomes, and you can't do that. I mean, maybe you could do that if you're Seattle with Russell Wilson, but that's literally trying to play fast court basketball, 3-point ball with the Golden State Warriors. Like, you just can't do it. They're just going to do it better than you. So I think that there are teams. It's just the only teams that I think are the teams that are going to pass rush, which the Steelers can definitely do, but can the Steelers be comfortable with running the ball 25, 30 times a game and really controlling time and possession? Because that's what matters. You have to keep him off the field, or else you're just going to lose. I mean, that's how Bill Belichick beat him in the championship game. And then the past year, nobody was able to do it. As far as the team, I don't know. I think Indianapolis, that might sound weird because you don't think the personnel will match up, but I think their defense will match up well. They could cover. They could pressure a little bit. They got DeForest Buckner up the middle. I mean, that's where I'm just trying to think of teams that can pressure up the middle because it's not really the edge guys. The edge guys are good. Like remember the Chargers game?
Yeah.
I mean, you saw the Chiefs only scored 23 points because I think Mahomes was really bothered by Bosa and Ingram really putting a lot of pressure, but he was able to escape a lot of that because he's mobile, so he could run out of that easy. But when you're coming up the middle, that's really hard as a quarterback to escape. So it's really hard. And the point about this is when I talk about up the middle, the only player that could really pressure Mahomes up the middle is on the Chiefs, and it's Chris Jones. So that's what kind of makes the Chiefs so stacked. It's like there's only one guy that could probably stop this guy, and he's on the Chiefs already. So,
yeah, it's such a good.
I don't know.
It's such a good point, man, and it's such a props to the Chiefs front office for being able to re-sign Chris Jones. I mean, they have 22 of the 23 people back from that Super Bowl run, and look, that's why I know you did your preseason picks. That's why I did. That's why I picked them to repeat. And it's hard to do that in the NFL, but they are really stacked, and you explained perfect the way to beat them, and that's how it's going to happen, and we'll see if it does. And I kind of do like your pick about Indianapolis. I think that's interesting. The only problem with that is I don't know how much I can trust Phillip Rivers because you can't outscore them, but you are going to have to put up some points. Their defense is set up to do that. I don't know about Phillip Rivers.
They beat them last year.
They did beat them last year, and so did the Texans, and then the playoffs came, and Texans were up 24-0, and we all saw how that happens. But I do think that's a lot.
They got away. They tried to shoot out. I mean, the Colts won last year because they ran Marlon Mack for 20,000 times on the ground for nearly 40 minutes of time of possession. But that's what you have to do. You have to keep Mahomes off the field and give him as little opportunities as possible. If you go in any team in the league that tries to go in and say, all right, we're just going to try to outscore these guys, you got to be the dumbest team in the world. I mean, you're just going to lose by 20, 30, 10. It doesn't matter. You're not going to win the game.
Yeah.
So,
no,
I think...
go ahead. Yeah, no, you're spot on. You're spot on, man. And then this is the thing with it. You're really laying... Because look at the 49ers. They did the same thing in the first half against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. They were with that amazing defensive line they had. They were rushing up the middle. They were making Mahomes uncomfortable. I mean, really, for the most part of that game, Damian Williams was the MVP for the way the Chiefs came back running it. They were making Mahomes really uncomfortable, but then they started to miss their throws. Jimmy G missed some crucial throws, and it ended up coming back and biting him. Is that pretty much kind of what you're saying with what happened with the Colts as well?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think with the reason they lost that game, they got away from their identity, and I think Mahomes is just. I mean, there's some times where that throw's just too good. I mean, that play I remember in the Super Bowl to Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like, come on, that's a hope and a prayer, and he got that. But, I mean, that just shows the power of this team. And they hit, I mean, going back to your point earlier about how they built that team, they hit on a lot of guys that were troublemakers. I mean, Travis Kelce, a lot of people don't know he was getting a lot of bad reviews just in terms of character, so the Chiefs got him in the third round. Tyreek Hill had a domestic violence in college, but anybody could have scouted him. He was a fast receiver that moved like lightning.
Yeah.
So obviously they picked him up in like the fifth round. He's a stud. Chris Jones, he was a second-round pick. He was terrific in college, one of the best defensive tackles in college. But the coaches at that college didn't really like him, and it caused him to slide. But having these guys, all these talented players just sent into Andy Reid's culture and system, it's going to work out for him. I mean, Andy has a track record. He could turn anybody. He'll turn apples and oranges. I mean, he's just that coach.
Yeah, I love Andy Reid. I was so happy for him to win that Super Bowl. I think he deserves it. He's a player's coach, and it's a testament. It's a testament to keeping that. When you have a lot of troublemakers like that on your team, it's hard to keep all of those guys in line, and he's been able to do that for the most part. I know Tyreek Hill had a little bit of a issue once he got in the league, but overall he's had that. And Mahomes, the thing that I love about Mahomes, and then we're going to move on from this because we have a lot more to talk about, is just how cool he looks as a young kid. I mean, he's 24 years old, and nothing rattles him, man. Like, he just looks like, and I don't know if that's because his dad played professional baseball. His dad kind of has that. He grew up with that gene, but it seriously seems like this guy could be down 30, and he will have the same exact expression on your face, and that has a lot to do with why they're winning.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I mean, he's a great athlete. I mean, he probably could have played in the major leagues if he wanted to. But, I mean, a lot of it's Andy Reid. I mean, Andy Reid, in my opinion, is one of the best, if not the best, quarterback coach of all time. I mean, he took Michael Vick out the penitentiary, made him a superstar. He took Alex Smith, who just lost his job at Kaepernick, and made him a superstar. Yeah. I mean, he took freaking Jeff Garcia and made him a starting quarterback. I mean, he has a track record of going on and on. I mean, Kevin Cobb. Some of these guys are just no names, but when Andy gets his hands on them, they're all of a sudden superstars. Nick Foles. Yeah. I mean, when you combine his knowledge of game planning, play calling. I mean, you see the playlist. The guys. I mean, by the way, too, he's got to get rid of that face shield with that fog machine he's got under his. You see that stuff?
That is too hard to watch, man.
I mean, he's got that fog machine going, but he's got that playlist that's just like up and down. He's going up that thing, and Mahomes is just doing whatever the heck he wants.
I know.
I mean, when you combine those two brains, it's just, I don't know how you stop that.
Yeah, and it's that just shows, just to bring it on a broader point, it's so much about fit in the NFL, man. Like, a lot of people, and this are down on Sam Darnold today because the Jets are absolutely atrocious, but I don't know if he's in a better place where he actually has a team around him where he's not a good quarterback, man. I mean, Mahomes, he would have been good wherever, but I don't know if he would have been this good with, he got in the perfect fit with this guy, Andy Reid there. So what we're going to take a quick break. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. We've got Emmet Weinman here with us, joining us for the last two segments of the show. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dive into a lot more football talk, and then we're also going to get into your fantasy lineup. Stay tuned. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back after this.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. We are entering segment number 4 here. We are with Emmet Weinman. Emmet Weinman hosts the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Go check that out on any of your podcast platforms. I'm telling you, he will help you win your fantasy leagues or your daily fantasy. I mean, hey, he gave you guys that nugget last week about whoever's playing Washington, you play that defense, and that worked out pretty well. And I'll tell you what, I got Baltimore this week, man, and I'm expecting 15 points from my defense this week. I better get some good things out of Baltimore's defense.
You could expect 30 points. He's just going to throw disguises at Dwayne Haskins that he's not able to process. That's the problem with Dwayne Haskins. I mean, I don't want to call a player dumb. I don't want to be disrespectful, but listen. He can't interpret information on the fly like Peyton Manning and go, all right, check here, Mike's right there. I mean, you see these guys at the line of scrimmage with all these calls. I mean, with Haskins, he can make these calls all he wants, but in his head, he can't see the pieces moving around on the chessboard, if you know what I mean. So with Don Martindale, he's one of the best at disguise blitzes. He's just going to toy with him. Basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and you're spot on, man. It's so funny whenever, because, I have Sunday tickets, so I watch the Falcons game, which is just a whole other topic in itself. But I watched that, and I have on my iPad the Red Zone channel, and whenever I see someone about to score on Washington, I immediately think of you, and I'm like, man, he said it. Like, you just listen to him. He said it. So keep listening to those nuggets that Emmett's giving you guys, and I'm sure you'll be in the playoffs for your fantasy league. So I want to do this. So now, Emmet is our fantasy football guy for GSMC, but he's also the resident Cowboys fan here, all right? So he hates the Eagles. I think that's fair to say, right? You hate the Eagles, right?
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
Okay, I mean, hate's a strong word, obviously not like literally, but you're not an Eagles guy. So the Eagles have just been atrocious this year. And what happened this past Sunday was really mind-blowing to me, man. And I think that anybody that's played sports before, I don't even care if it's on a professional level. I don't even care if it's on a college level, man. If you have played competitive sports before, this has to bug you what happens. And maybe I'm taking it in a different way, and I'm looking at it from a way that others aren't. But the Eagles pretty much played for a tie because of Doug Peterson not trusting Carson Wentz. And I get Carson Wentz has looked terrible. I'm going to give you the floor, Emmet, here. What are your thoughts about what Doug Peterson did, and how does the team come back from that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree about the message it kind of sends to the locker room, because we all know, I mean, Doug Peterson, he came in and he made his identity. Hey, I'm going to be Mr. Aggressive. We're going for it on fourth down.
Super Bowl.
We're not going to. Exactly. That's all he did. I mean, he's Mr. Aggressive. That's your title. That's what that's what your name is going to go by in terms of your identity. And to do what he did on Sunday totally is contrary to what you built yourself as an identity. So, I mean, it is pretty embarrassing. But the Eagles overall, they're not very good. Mm-hmm. I mean, they are not very good. I don't think their culture's good. I think you have a lot of guys that are still celebrating the Super Bowl in that locker room. I think their roster is very overrated. I mean, you look at their past three drafts, they really haven't brought in anybody significant. They're free agents. They're just signing a bunch of free agents trying to Band-Aid the roster. And that's not going to work out in the long term. It worked out in the short term for them. And I think Howie's really trying to just, plug some pieces in, thinking, we're 2 players away, we're 3 players away. Well, Howie, now it looks like you probably got to rebuild with the way this season's going.
Look, they got lucky, man. I mean, that Super Bowl run was luck. And I know everyone's going to sit up here and say, Kayvon, you're a Falcons fan, blah, blah, blah. Go back and watch the game against the Falcons. The Falcons literally were on the 2-yard line with the ball. If they score that none of that happens. They don't go to the Super Bowl. They don't even go to the conference championship game. It was such a lucky. The roster was good, yes, but since then they've got to return everything. And this is my question, man, because watching that game, watching the Eagles this year, it almost seems like to me that Carson Wentz does not like Doug Peterson. Like, I think that there is an underlying story there where those two, that coach and that player, they don't get along, man, because it looks like every play call, Carson Wentz is pissed. He doesn't like it. He's trying to check it out of it, and he's trying to go deep every play. And Carson Wentz has his own issues right now, but this is my thing. Doug Peterson won the Super Bowl. Carson Wentz didn't. If it comes down to it, and you know how Eagles fans are, who are they getting rid of? Doug Peterson or Carson Wentz?
That's a good question. I mean, Carson Wentz just got $130 gazillion, so I'm shocked that they cut him. Doug Peterson, he's got the ring, so he's got the Andy Reid connection too, so I don't think either of them. But here's the reality. I mean, Frank Reich won him that Super Bowl.
There you go. Boom.
Coordinator. And he basically ran the entire offense, called all the plays, developed Carson Wentz, got the running game involved heavily. I mean, people don't even know this, but the Eagles were one of the top rushing teams the year they won the Super Bowl. They were using guys like Jay Ajayi, Corey Clement, LeGarrette Blount. I mean, they were they're basically a very good balanced offense that if they played from ahead, they were very dangerous. And now, I mean, they just have no firepower. I mean, they had one receiver at practice this week. One.
Jeez.
I mean, and you expect the Eagles to be explosive on offense and do anything versus the 49ers? I mean, where they come from to where they are right now is, I mean, it is night and day to say the least. But I mean, Frank Reich had a lot to do with the Eagles winning that Super Bowl. Carson Wentz I think he's 14-16 since Frank Reich left town as a starting quarterback, and that's not even good enough to be on a lot of teams. And I mean, that's not even good enough for the Jets, crying out loud. That probably is, but still, I mean. That's what he is. He's 14-16.
Man,
the Eagles won that Super Bowl.
See, that's why I like having you on the show, all right? Because you look at things that normal people aren't looking at. Dude, the story about what Frank Reich did on that offensive staff does not get enough attention, man. And I know, like, they don't look at Frank. Yeah. I mean, Frank Reich is a really good coach, and he hasn't had as much success as people thought. I mean, the Hall of Fame track of Andrew Luck left him. I mean, what do you expect? He had to restart out of nowhere with someone like Jacoby Brissett. So I love Frank Reich, man, and I completely agree about that. And the Eagles, man, they're in a must-win situation going to San Francisco on Sunday night, and I'm worried that they're not even going to be able to make it a team against Nick Mullins. Like, I don't even know if they'll make it like a good performance to watch. But
I got Twitter up right now. I just see a report. It literally says Jason Peters is on IR. I mean, who they got on the O-line?
God. Whew.
They got no receivers, no O-line. Carson Wentz is Carson Wentz. I mean, Miles Sanders, okay, I know he's a fantasy breakout. I mean, everybody's just going to stack the box. Mm-hmm. If I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm doubling Ertz. Okay, you're not throwing to Ertz.
No.
And I'm going to just stack the box and make sure Miles Sanders doesn't run more than 3 yards. What are you going to do if you're on offense?
You're going to throw it to Greg Ward, who used to be a quarterback in college.
Yeah, basically a guy they brought off the scout team. And I mean, how he's, in the offseason, there was, Deshaun Jackson this, Deshaun Jackson that. We brought him back. He's going to be this. Alshon Jeffries is coming back. Well, I told you, if you listen to my fantasy, I said he wasn't even a guy worth drafting. He was not going to stay healthy. He's not healthy. Jalen Reagor, their first-round pick. I mean, he's a speedster, but, he's got I think a thumb injury. He's on IR. I mean, it's just these injuries have been piling up for the Eagles, but this has been going back to their roster building. I mean, they're bringing in a lot of veteran guys, and when guys get older, it takes a lot longer for their bodies to recover.
Yeah, and I don't know why, and this is a whole different conversation. We won't get into this because we got to move on, but I don't know why they won't take a chance on Antonio Brown. Look, I'm someone that I'm not a fan of Antonio Brown. I mean, he's obnoxious. I think he's just a waste of talent, and he makes me so frustrated because of that. But this is a team that really could use him. And if he's, you got to go through all the mental checks and make sure he's all right and all that stuff. And I don't know if he will check out. But, I mean, them and the Texans, why not give it a chance?
Nah, nobody. I'm going to tell you, nobody in the league is going to bring back Antonio Brown. Nobody.
You think he's done? You think he's done for good? Do you think he's done for good?
Well, basically, getting cut from the Patriots is like the kiss of death. I mean, if Belichick can't straight you out, I don't know who else. And then the stuff it's not like he's come out after and said, I was irresponsible. I had this going on. I had that going on. He's only added, fuel to the fire with, all the Twitter nonsense and the live streams and the stuff between him and his baby mom. I mean, nobody's going to want to deal with that stuff. And then on top of that, it's, his character. I mean, honestly, and I don't mean this in a funny or disrespectful way, but honestly, I think he might have CT. And I'm not even trying to be funny.
No, I think you're right.
Something with him is just not right. Something with him's not right.
I think you're spot on.
Anybody's touching him.
I think you're spot on, man. And it's sad. It's so sad because he was the one receiver, man, that I would look at and I would say, that guy actually can compete with Julio Jones for the best receiver in the league. Now, there's other guys now like Hopkins that have come up and all that stuff, Michael Thomas, but Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. I mean, a lot of people will even put Antonio Brown over Julio when he was out there killing it. So I think you're right, man. I think that there is some issues there, and CT is a serious thing, and it definitely could be a possibility, and we'll find out as it goes on. But I think you're right. I don't know how people do touch him right now. So let's move into this. Me and Emmet had a very fun discussion. I'll put it that way. I think it was a very fun discussion this past Sunday about what is a bad team in the NFL. You know, we were texting about it because Emmet went on his fantasy show, which you can go check it out, GSMC Fantasy Football Show, and he talked about the New York Jets, the New York Giants, how they're bad organizations, and then he also put in my Atlanta Falcons in there. And I told him, I said, look, I don't classify the Atlanta Falcons as a bad team, all right? They're a team that doesn't know how to win. They're a team that chokes, and they're a team that clearly just doesn't have the coaching philosophy and the leadership of how to win. But I don't see them as a bad team because they're getting up on these teams like Dallas, like Chicago. They were even up on Seattle at one point. Like, I don't classify them in the range of where the Jets and the Giants are. Do you put them all together, Emmet?
No, well, I mean, I think the thing that we have to decipher, what's a bad team from a bad organization?
Okay.
I don't think the Falcons are necessarily a bad organization. I mean, I think Arthur Blank is coming out with a lot more questions than answers after watching these games. But,
yeah.
I mean, the Giants are truly a bad organization. Mm-hmm. They've been doing the same thing over and over and over and have 12 wins since the boat trip. That's a bad organization.
Since the boat trip.
And the Jets, they have no clue what they're doing either. I mean, Woody Johnson, Chris Johnson, I don't know what they're doing. They must be sleeping. But they've been doing the same thing over and over and over. The Falcons, I mean, you talk about, they're up in games. Listen, here's the deal. Bill Parcells always says this. You are what your record says you are.
You're right.
And they're an 0-3 team. I mean, everybody says, listen, the Cowboys, they're an 0-3 team. They should be an 0-3 team because of that onside kick. Well, they're a 1-2 team. I could argue that they should be a 3-0 team, but they're not. They're a 1-2 team. So at the end of the day, good teams will always prevail in this league. They'll always find a way to win. And it's just that you are what your record says you are. So that's why I said the Falcons are a bad team because you're 0-3. Until you prove me otherwise.
Yeah, no,
can't say that.
You're right. When it comes to that, when it comes to looking at the record, you are right. They are a bad football team as an 0-3 team. I'm just looking at it more from the sense of what I'm seeing on the field. No one can tell me that the Bears are is a better football team than the Falcons. Like, that does not come into my mind, and I'm not trying to be biased here. Watching that game, it just shows that the fourth quarter comes around, the Falcons look at their watch, they look at the clock, and they said, oh, okay, here's the fourth quarter, let's choke the lead now. Like, that's what happens, and to me, you can and it really all comes down to what you call a bad team and what in your mind is a bad team. But to me, that's just a team that doesn't understand how to win, and there's a missing piece. So that's it. I mean, we can go back and forth about that all day, but I get what you're saying. Now, quickly on the New York Jets and the New York Giants. When you say that they're bad organizations, they both are going to be in the running to get the number one pick. If both of them get if whichever one get the number one pick, Jets, Giants, do you have to take Lawrence? Either of them?
I mean, it'd be hard to trade that pick away. I mean, I'd say you have to take him. I mean, with Darnold, look, I mean, you want to say, we love this guy. He's really talented. I mean, he's one of the players on the Jets. Like, man, he's really trying. I mean, you saw him get injured early on that. I think it was I don't know if it was on that running play or something, but he had an injured shoulder. Really, just laying it all out on the line. I give him credit. I mean, Daniel Jones, you could say he has potential, but he can't keep the ball in his hands. So at the end of the day, I mean, those teams, I'd say you have to take take the quarterback and then just try to do a complete organizational overhaul. They're reaching a point where they're so bad. They've been so bad for just consecutive years over and over. It's not just a coaching change, a GM change, a player change. This is way more than that. You have to change the way you operate as an entire organization, the entire way you pick players, the way you bring in, I mean, everything, bro. Everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right. And
I'm not going to say that about an Atlanta, the Houston teams that are 0-3, but I can't say that they need organizational overhauls when they were recently in the playoffs. The Jets, the Giants, I can't even remember the last time they were in the playoffs.
Yeah, me either. No, you're spot on. That's a great way to put it. All right, let's go into some fantasy football now. Emmet Weinman here, host of the Fantasy Football Show. Help you win your leagues every single week. All right, Emmet, let's run it down like we do every week. Emmet's going to give us the best position to play at, the best player to play at each position. Take over, QB, who you got this week?
Well, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, how does he not get like 50 points?
That's for sure.
I mean, well, the thing is, I mean, he has, Devontae Adams is coming in. I don't know if he's 100%. I don't think he is, but it sounds like he's going to play. And the truth is Atlanta just can't cover anybody, so that's why I'd take Rodgers. Matty Ice, too. I'd take Matty Ice. I think Green Bay's defense is a bit overrated. And I think, both of those guys are moving into the category where they're all must-starts. Trying to find a sleeper. I like Prescott. I like Wilson. Those guys aren't sleepers. Maybe Baker Mayfield, but, that would just give me so much anxiety. I can't trust him at all.
Yeah, no way.
But as far as quarterbacks go, from a DFS standpoint, I love just picking the surefire. Pick up Rodgers, pick up Ryan, and try to find value at other positions. But pretty much all the elite quarterbacks have good matchups this week.
Yep, I agree. I think that Packers-Falcons game could go over 60 points as a total. And the Falcons are going to be missing Keanu Neal and Ricardo Allen, their two starting safeties. So you can pretty much book Rodgers for 4 or 5 touchdown passes. I see that. Hey, quick sleeper on a quarterback that I thought of when you were just talking about Russell Wilson. What about Fitzpatrick, man? That Seattle defense is rough.
Yeah, I was looking at that as well. Great matchup on paper, but it's Fitzpatrick.
Can you trust him?
You can't trust him, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I agree. That's more of in the Baker anxiety field. Totally get that. All right, so running back, who are you going with?
Running backs, I think Nick Chubb is going to just run for 5,000 yards this weekend. I think the Browns are going to get into a lot of nickel formations versus the Cowboys, and Stefanski's just going to run the heck out of him. Kareem Hunt, I think, is questionable with a groin injury. Typically a groin injury probably means a no-go. Just because that's one of the most important muscles that you need to run. So I don't think he's going to play, if I had to guess. Devin Singletary, I love the matchup he has this weekend. Without Zach Moss being there, I think he's a clear-cut starter in fantasy and DFS. David Johnson, I love him a lot. He's playing Minnesota. I think, he's been doing that. I think they need to get him. I have him on my team. They need to get him involved more in the passing game. But I'll give him a break, Billy O'Brien a break for the first 3 weeks. They played the Ravens, the Steelers. Those are top defenses, and the Chiefs as well. So I think now with the Vikings, and they're a very young defense that is just disorganized, in my opinion, I think he'll do well. I wrote down Melvin Gordon's name. He already played, though, on Thursday night. I think he had like 20 points or something, and he had that last-minute touchdown on that ridiculous play that couldn't defend. Dalvin Cook, I think Dalvin Cook's a must-start every week, but I think versus Houston, that might be a good over bet, no lie, looking at it now. But yeah, I think Dalvin Cook is going to do just fine. I can't really think of anybody else. Kamara, obviously. Yeah. What do you think about Gurley?
Yeah, I actually like Gurley a lot this week, man. I think that the Packers, they're one of the last in the rankings when it comes to run defense, and I think that the Falcons are really going to try and get that run going because that's been a big issue. And last week against the Bears, who's a good run defense, they ran for a total of like 150 yards between Gurley and Brian Hill. So I actually like Gurley a lot. I have him in fantasy. I'm going to start him. The two guys that I really like, obviously all those main guys, you're spot on with that. I love Singletary and I love Gurley this week. I think those are two people that you can get decent value with in fantasy when it comes to DFS, right?
I would say Singletary, absolutely. Get value on him. Gurley, man, I don't know why they keep... my guess is they just want to limit Gurley's snap counts because they understand that, Gurley's not Gurley at Georgia or early in the LA Rams. He's different now with his injuries. I don't know. I don't get the obsession with Brian Hill, whatever his name is.
I don't either.
They're bringing in, he's dropping the ball in the passing game.
I know. What? Man, trust me, why are they not...
3 drops.
Why are they not throwing the... Dude, Gurley has 3 catches on the year. 3 catches, dude. This guy was catching so many passes with the Rams and doing something with it. Yeah, you're right, man. It makes no sense to me. I think that they are clearly trying to limit his snap count. But when you're 0-3, I play the dang guy. All right, when you're 0-2 and you're trying to beat the Bears, you keep that man in the whole game. What's the point of even bringing him if you're not going to do that? So I'll get off that whole soapbox, but you hit it on the nail, so I had to go forward with that.
And Ito Smith, too. They're trying to bring Ito Smith and work him in. I mean, he's okay. He'll give you a little juice, but, I mean, none of those guys are Todd Gurley. But I think they're just trying to limit him. I mean, they understand. I mean, Sean McVay used the heck out of him. Every mileage he had, he used out of Todd Gurley.
He really did.
I don't think... Yeah, the Falcons can't do the same, unfortunately.
No, they can't. But if he can get 20 touches or so, 18, 20 touches, I do think he can find the end zone this week against the Packers because I think it will be a high-scoring game. But, all right, let's move to wide receivers now. Who do you got with the wide receivers for Week 4?
I think Will Fuller's really good. I mean, he's going up against Minnesota. Minnesota, they're so young in the secondary. I just think he's going to do whatever he wants versus them. Devontae Parker versus Seattle, I think that's a good matchup. I mean, any receiver versus Seattle, Minnesota, you should just start them. I mean, those secondaries, I think, are just lost, in my opinion, and they're really low in depth. Justin Jefferson versus the Texans, I think he might have I don't know if he's going to repeat last week, but he might have another game that's very similar. I think Houston's lacking in a lot of corner depth. The Cowboys receivers, I think you got to start. I mean, I don't know if you want to start every single one of them, but I mean, the Browns, they had a lot of trouble in the secondary. I think I think at home, they're all going to be increased in terms of value because if you look at a lot of their numbers, especially Amari Cooper, their numbers at home compared to on the road are skyrocketed, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Can't really think of anybody else, though.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. Michael Gallup won me my league last week, man. I was I won by 20 points, and Gallup got me 19.8, which put it over by like 1 point. So I got really, really lucky with Michael Gallup. You told me to put him in. I wasn't going to, but I did, luckily. So thanks for that. Move to the tight ends here. Who you got with tight ends?
Tight ends, I think I like Dalton Schultz. I mean, I know that sounds like a homer pick, but I think he's going to get a lot of targets versus the Cleveland Browns. I mean, they're not very good at linebacker. They can't really cover tight ends very well. So I think he might have a couple red zone targets and then might get him a touchdown, which is all you really need. Mo Alley-Cox, I think he's a little bit of a sleeper. I think Phillip Rivers really, really, really likes his tight ends, and you saw that. Back in San Diego when he brought in, when they had the two tight end sets going with Hunter Henry and Antonio Gates. Now I think with Allie Cox and Jack Doyle, they're trying to do the same thing. But with Doyle out, Allie Cox is the number one.
Yeah.
T.J. Hawkinson, I like him a lot. I think he's a player I have on my bench. I'm just stashing him for now. Kenny Golladay comes back this week, so he might take a couple targets away, but I mean, Hawkinson's rapport with Stafford seems to be pretty adequate, and I think, he was getting 10 points a game in standard up until now, so I think he's doing pretty well. And then, obviously, Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews, he had a couple bad weeks come after that monster opening week that he had. He's probably due for a bounce back versus the Redskins. I mean, I think you might as well just put every player on the Ravens, right?
Yeah, no,
I don't see. How do the Ravens not just roll over the Redskins?
Shoot, man, the over/under's 45. The Ravens might get to that themselves. I'm not even kidding. You're spot on there. They're going to be angry. They're going to be pissed. And back to that Dalton Schultz, man, he has actually the most. I saw this stat the other day. The most red zone targets on that team. It's not Amari Cooper. It's not Michael Gallup. It's Dalton Schultz. So I love that pick by you. I actually picked him up this week in one of my leagues and might play him. All right, and now defense. I know we know the Ravens. All right, you gave us the best nugget last week. You play them against whoever Washington's playing, and it's going to work out. We know the Ravens. Other than the Ravens, anyone you like this week for a defense?
I should have tweeted it out. I like the Jets, and I know a lot of people are going to go, huh? But I mean, when they're playing Brett Ripien, who's not even a professional quarterback, in my opinion. I mean, how do you not take any defense against him? So, I mean, they had 3 interceptions. They had to pick 6 near the end, and they still managed to lose the game, which is incredible. But they still got 8 points. The Rams defense, I think they're pretty much off waivers. So I don't know if you can consider them a streaming option, but they're playing the Giants. I mean, how can you not like that? Trying to run through the list here. I like the Broncos defense, but they already played. 49ers defense, if you can stream them, I don't know if that's possible. I mean, versus the Eagles, how do you? I think they just completely shut the Eagles down. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Chiefs defense, I think that might be a good streaming option. I know you got to look at whether the game's going to be played or not, obviously with it being postponed, but I mean, Cam Newton's not playing. You got to always, here's my tip on defense, aside from fading the Redskins. If you can't do that, here's your plan B. Just look for a really, really, really bad quarterback. Mm-hmm. Always play defenses against bad quarterbacks because they'll throw you cookies.
Yeah.
They're not going to give you a lot of yards. So.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, man. And that Jets defense, that actually you would have gotten more than 8 points if, to your point earlier, they didn't let in that garbage time 50-yard touchdown to Melvin Gordon. That would have been.
Did you see that?
That was terrible, man. Terrible.
That's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. It's so embarrassing.
And then Adam Gase has the nerve to call timeouts after.
I know, man. That whole thing was embarrassing. Now, we are going a little over time, so one last thing, because you did mention it, and I do think a lot of fantasy people are going to be having anxiety and are going to be worrying about this, man. If you're someone with Patrick Mahomes, with Travis Kelce, with Tyreek Hill, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and you are going into Sunday, tomorrow, and right now the NFL is saying that they're going to be playing on Monday and Tuesday. Are you keeping those in? What do you need to hear to know that you should keep these players in? Like, what do you do here, man? Because this is a serious issue. Like, I don't know if I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire in my hometown league, and this is a big-time league. I don't know if I can keep him in unless I get certain word that the game is exactly happening, right?
Yeah, you better have the notifications on Twitter. Tune in the rap, tune in the chef.
Yeah.
To the pregame show, the Jay Glazer show, all of them. Tune in to everything, man. Make sure you're locked in. That's all I could say, because I know as much as you. I don't have.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I can only guess.
Mm-hmm.
I can only guess, but yeah, I definitely understand why it's a difficult situation. But I talked about this in the off season before we got rolling, is how, you're going to need depth at all the positions, and it's going to be beyond just injuries. It's going to be COVID related, and a lot of people. I was really saying this jokingly early in the season, but I was asking someone like, hey, what happens if the game's tomorrow and two guys get tested and they got COVID and the whole team's out? And people were saying, oh, that's not going to happen. Well, look, we're here, and unfortunately that's the case. So. Listen, you have to emphasize depth, and I think in trades, try to look for some trades where if you could trade a superstar, like I know you're not going to want to hear this, but I'm trying to move Julio to see if I can get a running back and a really good receiver. Mm-hmm. Trying to do 2-for-1s, 3-for-2s, just so I can have good bodies, more bodies on my team to substitute in and out. So I'm not as affected by these COVID situations on fantasy as other teams are, who are just trying to have a nice stacked starting lineup, but their bench is doo-doo. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, no, you're spot on. Go ahead. You want to have the strongest bench. Mm-hmm. I know that's going to sound weird, but you want to have a really, really strong bench, because that'll help you in the long haul when situations like this come up. Yep, and you better believe they're going to keep coming up, unfortunately. And I would just say one thing to add on to that. If Shefty and all those guys are saying that the NFL is saying the game is going to happen as long as no one else tests positive, I would not be playing those players, because you're just banking that no other positives are coming out, and that's risky. And I'd rather play like a Joe Burrow or someone off the bench over than not having Mahomes play at all. I think you have to watch the wording of how they're talking about it, and really, unless it's a full-on go, I don't know how you can keep those players in, which just goes back to your point of have a strong bench, have as many capable bodies ready to go, which is great advice, man. Awesome. Emmet Weinman, I appreciate it, man. You can go check him out. Any podcast network, any podcast platform, Spotify, iTunes, whatever, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. It is the Fantasy Football Show, GSMC Fantasy Football Show. Emmet Weinman is the host. Give it a check out. Emmet, we'll do it again next week. We'll talk over the weekend. Best of luck to your Cowboys, man. Hopefully my Falcons can make this game somewhat fun. And, hey, miracles can happen, bro. All right? Miracles can happen. I'll say that. No, listen, I'm worried. I'm not going to expect my Cowboys to come walk in the park with the Cleveland Browns. I'm not expecting that at all. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cleveland Browns, come in here motivated and pull an upset. So I'm not talking hefty about them either, man. I'm just laying low for now.
Well, I bet on them.
A couple wins under them belts.
I bet on them minus 4.5, so they better do it.
Oh, man. Good luck with that. That would give me anxiety if I was on that ticket.
It is a little bit worrisome, but it is what it is. All right, Emmett, appreciate it, man. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your football. This is the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really, really helps us. We've got some great reviews so far. Keep those up. Also, give us a tweet at GSMC_football, at Kayvon_sports. And please give us our follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night, and we will talk to you next week. Enjoy your football.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.